Hey, I'm Nancy. So I died today. On my 26th birthday, my stepsister Jane pushed me into the pool, and my fiancé Ken just stood there watching me drown, struggling for air. In that moment, I heard a voice whispering in my ear, "You get a chance to go back." When I opened my eyes again, it was noisy all around me. My vision cleared, and I saw a sea of red and green uniforms. Wait a second, isn't this the ugly uniform from my high school days? Before I could think more, a woman in her 40s walked in and turned on the multimedia. "Your monthly exam scores are out. Our class did pretty well overall, but..." At that moment I felt a gaze hit me. Some students are still consistent in their performance. Her words were sarcastic, pulling me back into reality. Did I really get reborn? All the way back to freshman year of high school? On the big screen there was a list. My name was at the bottom. Except for physics, where I barely scored in the 80s, all my other subjects were terrible. I was never great at studying in high school, but thanks to my successful entrepreneur dad, Johnny, I got into the city's top school and top class. Everyone scored 500 or 600 points, and I barely scraped 300, yet no one dared to say anything. Except my teacher. "Nancy, stand up." I was still shaken from the feeling of drowning, not quite believing everything around me. So I got up shakily and walked towards the classroom door. Mumbling, "Okay, fine, I'll go stand in the hallway." The room was dead silent. Even the teacher hadn't expected me to be so bold. "Nancy, what do you think this is? Get back here." But it was too late, I'd already stepped out the door. There was a girl standing there, and I bumped right into her. Seeing her, my blood froze and I started trembling uncontrollably. "Hello there," she said, but her words didn't warm me. How could I not be scared? This girl was Jane. Back then, Jane and her mom showed up in my life. And then I lost my loving mom and all my dad's love. Everything I had for 16 years was taken away. Stunned, I watched as the teacher pulled Jane into the class. "This is our new student, Jane. Go ahead and introduce yourself." Jane shuffled nervously, and I walked over and slapped her right across the face. A slap I hadn't managed in 10 years finally done. The whole class gasped, and the teacher immediately pulled me aside. Holding her cheek, Jane looked devastated. "Did I upset you?" She looked innocent, but having known her for so long, I knew better. Only when my mom passed did I realize Jane's appearance in my life was planned. So, even as she cried innocently, she already knew exactly who I was. Stupid me never saw the rot behind her mask, and even became close friends with her. "Nancy, are you crazy? Why would you hit a new student?" the teacher yelled. I glared at Jane, sneering. No reason, just felt like hitting a bitch. The teacher was fuming, and I was definitely getting a trip to the office. Along the way, my thoughts became clearer, memories flooding back. Jane became my classmate in the second half of freshman year. She seemed delicate, her height only reaching my chin, with big watery eyes. I never cared much with my wild streak, but on the day she joined, I ran into some thugs after school. She showed up just in time, threatening to call the cops, and scared them off. After that, I considered Jane a friend, always looking out for her, even bringing her home to meet my mom. Thinking of mom, sadness and suffocation hit me. The teacher kept rambling. "Nancy, you're still my student. You can't just do whatever you like." I nodded absent-mindedly, until she said something more earnestly. "Jane's from a single-parent home, she's had it tough. You might not understand, but as classmates, show some respect." Tough life? For a criminal? She might not have a dad, but she's got a powerful mom. Tired of her rant, I pretended to apologize. On my way out, she sighed. "Nancy, I believe you're a good kid, but students should act like students." I suddenly felt she wasn't as mean as I remembered. Back in class, Jane's seat was right next to mine. Smiling like she forgot the slap, she greeted me. I ignored her, roughly kicking her chair leg. "Can you move? You're in my way." I was so unapproachable, she finally stayed quiet in the next class. I had time to think about this second chance. I wasn't given a new life to boss around here, but to live for myself. This is my life. I have to make it something to remember. And Jane? She's not getting away this time. Next, we had English, and they were handing out last month's test. The paper with my name was covered in doodles, no real answers. I face-palmed, embarrassed by how immature I used to be. "This test is tricky. Who can translate?" Silence filled the room. I looked at the paper and thought, is it really that hard? It was just a simple English story. I remembered after Mom's death, I moved abroad to escape, and English became my second language. I can do it, I raised my hand calmly. The class murmured, even the teacher looked unsure. Okay, Nancy, give it a try. I translated smoothly, even explaining the tricky words and giving clear answers. By the end, the teacher didn't need to explain a thing. You can tell right away that Nancy put a lot of effort into this exercise. Really impressive. The English teacher sincerely praised her. Jane was also watching me with scrutiny in her eyes. She must have heard that I'm someone who doesn't study much and is at the bottom of the class. Teacher, I have a great idea to help everyone learn English better. Maybe we could try it out? After the way I performed just now, and since I was speaking so earnestly, the English teacher seemed a bit moved. I continued, how about we let the students explain the test questions to each other just like I did earlier? Letting students teach each other is a high-efficiency learning method that's often used abroad. Before the English teacher could respond, I quickly added, I heard Jane is a great student. How about letting her try the next question? Jane went to school in the countryside for elementary and middle school, so she hardly has any English background. Faced with high school English, she was flustered and at a loss, nervously looking down. I'm sorry, teacher, I can't do it. I feigned surprise. This question is the easiest. How could you not know how to do it? The English teacher couldn't help but frown. I heard Jane was specially admitted into the honors class, and now she can't even fill in a simple English blank. No teacher likes students who don't study well and still get special treatment. I know this all too well. We're in an honors class. Besides studying, everything else is just fluff. Jane, you can sit down. The English teacher's face was visibly displeased, and for the rest of the lesson, Jane kept her head down, too scared to look up. In contrast, I was extremely eager to answer questions and thoroughly enjoyed the whole class. Turns out being good at studying feels like this. Seeing Jane embarrassed gave me an indescribable thrill. After evening study ended, it was already 9 o'clock. The classmates left one after another, but Jane was still dawdling. Thinking of what happened on this day in my past life, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh as I left the school. From school to home is just a 10-minute walk, passing by a long alley. Today, the streetlights in the alley were strangely broken, leaving the whole path in darkness. Hey girl, you look pretty nice. A sleazy male voice came from the darkness. A blonde man appeared in front of me, and 4 others stood with him. I stood there unfazed, even curling my lips into a slight smile. I suggest you leave now. That man thought I was just pretending to be calm. You've got guts, I like that about you. He reached out to touch my face. Just then a familiar voice sounded from behind. Don't touch her. Jane was at the end of the road holding a phone. If you guys bully my classmate again, I'll call the police. The same lines matched perfectly with my memory. Jane, come over here. I beckoned to her, walking towards her simultaneously. When I reached her, I grabbed her hand and used it to hit my own face. Just as this happened, a black car stopped at the end of the alley. The man in the car rushed out in a panic, pushing Jane aside to stand in front of me. Nancy, what happened? Those thugs fled in a hurry while Jane stood there stunned. With tears in my eyes, I looked at the man before me. Dad, I'm so scared. I didn't do anything to my new classmate. I don't know why she'd team up with others to bully me. Jane was best at playing the pity card in my past life. I'm just using a scoundrel's tactics against them this time. Johnny had just left work and came to pick me up after getting my call. Before he even reached the school, he saw his daughter surrounded by thugs and slapped by someone. Furious, he looked at the girl beside me, but seeing that it was Jane, his anger spiked. Who taught you how to bully my daughter like this? Jane shook her head. No, it wasn't like that, she did it herself. So you're saying my daughter slapped herself? You think I'm blind? Johnny glared at her and led her aside. I vaguely heard him say, I didn't send you to the honor school to learn bad things. Tell your mom I won't be visiting soon. Indeed, my seemingly upright father was already entangled with that woman by now. Dad, do you know my new classmate? I asked the man beside me with an innocent and naive look. Johnny's expression turned a bit awkward. With a child like me, he wasn't so good at pretending. Of course, I don't know her, but she bullied my daughter, so I had to say something. But since she's your new classmate... Seeing he was about to speak up for Jane, I quickly interrupted. Don't worry, Dad, I'll get along with my classmates just fine. He looked a bit surprised. You've matured. I smiled innocently and sincerely, because I've grown up. I want to be Daddy's good girl. Yet inside I felt cold and even a bit disgusted. Nancy, I've been too busy lately to spend time with you and your mom. From now on, I'll make sure to be around more. A hint of guilt showed on Johnny's face, but for me it was just revolting. After 10 years of heartbreak, I had forgotten how to feel pain. Only revenge brought me satisfaction. Back home, I passed by the pool where I drowned in my previous life and couldn't help but feel dizzy. The house was just as I remembered. Good, there's no trace of Jane here yet. Nancy's back. A familiar voice called from upstairs. I froze, looking up and waiting for the footsteps to get closer, until that familiar, gentle face appeared in my sight. My mom, Kate. I couldn't hold back the tears, and at the moment I saw her, I rushed up the stairs and hugged her tightly. Mom, I missed you so much. She obviously looked startled. Nancy, what's wrong? I just cried, trying to shed every last tear I had held back in my past life. I hadn't graduated high school when Jane's mom, Bella, started coming around to provoke us. Jane won Johnny over completely, and they took over our place. The day I came home from the college entrance exam, I found Mom at the bottom of the stairs while Bella stood on the second floor triumphantly. Your mom fell down the stairs on her own. She's too careless. My mom didn't make it to the hospital and passed before she could say a final word to me. The saddest part was that, before her mourning period was even over, Bella and her daughter moved into our home openly. My outbursts only resulted in Johnny slapping me hard and saying, "Don't disrespect Bella. We're a family now." That's when my nightmare of a life began. Until Jane stole my fiancé, Ken, and told me at their wedding that my mom's fall down the stairs was all Bella's doing, and my dad knew. That's why I didn't hold back and fought with her, eventually being pushed into the pool and drowning. What's got you crying like this? Is someone bullying you at school? Mom asked, wiping my tears as she held my shoulders. Her warmth filled me with comfort. No one would dare bully your daughter, Mom. I just missed you. Smooth talker, only a day apart and missing you already. Nancy missed her mom a lot. I kept cuddling up to the woman beside me, soaking in that genuine warmth. Johnny came over at that moment. What's up with you two? Crying one second, laughing the next? He usually didn't get involved in our affairs. I remembered on this day in my past life he was probably with Jane and her mom. And then less than a week later, my mom got a call from Bella, finding out that Johnny had cheated. My mom looked gentle but had a strong will. After a huge argument with Johnny, she ended up with serious lung issues and kept coughing for 2 years. In this life I messed with Jane's plans, still unsure what Bella would do next. Now that I'm actually studying, I realize Jane was never really a good student. She often couldn't keep up with the class, and even when she did, she couldn't understand. It's like, could you be any dumber? Last life she got by leaning on me. This time, she's having a tough ride. Why hasn't Jane turned in last class quiz? What's up, Jane? The class rep looked fed up, like they were staring at trash. I have just one more question to finish. Can you wait a sec, please? Jane looked pitiful. But using that pitiful act on a bunch of teenagers? It'd just draw more dislike. I stood up slowly, purposely knocking over the water on her paper. Oh my God, looks like you'll have to redo that. I winked at her slyly. She clenched her fists, wanting to explode but held back, even squeezing out a few tears. Nancy, what did I ever do to you? Good question. That question was like a curveball. There's enough to fill a book on that. I leaned into her ear and coldly whispered, do you know when you cry you look like a toad? She stopped crying immediately, couldn't figure me out though. And the next day, Bella showed up at the school gate. Wearing a flashy red dress and big sunglasses, you would have thought she was some celebrity. You must be Nancy, she said so warmly, reaching out for me, but I dodged. You are? I pretended not to know her. I'm your dad's colleague, here to pick you up. He's dining with friends at the restaurant tonight. Colleague, yeah right. Johnny's the company president, Bella at most some low-level staff. There never was such a dinner pickup last time around. Looks like my actions led to some changes. But that's exactly what I want. As long as Bella doesn't come near my mom, I have plenty of ways to deal with her. During the ride, Bella tried hard to be friendly, like we were close. Your dad always says you're a good kid, and seeing you today, I really like you. Her overzealous compliments were straight out of a How to Flatter Kids playbook. I watched her fake face in the mirror and said in my sweetest voice, "Auntie, you're older, loose skin happens. A bit of stem cell treatment might help." She seemed a bit awkward, didn't have a chance to breathe before I continued. "How does my dad end up chatting about home with a junior employee like you?" I called out the obvious gap in her and Johnny's positions. She seemed to get irrationally mad. She only got into the company thanks to my dad. With just her middle school education, she'd struggle even sweeping floors there. After my mom passed away in my last life, she married my dad, becoming the company's boss lady. Still unsure what tricks she used to become the second largest shareholder. But those shares rightfully belonged to my mom. If they were to be transferred, they'd go to me. Too bad the old me was too weak and impulsive, so this woman bullied me into dust. "Auntie, do you always wear such vibrant clothes? My dad hates flashy colors." "But can't blame you. Heard the poorer your mind, the more you dress to make up for it," I said, continuing my teasing with the most innocent look. "How can you talk like that to me? I'm still your elder," she said, slightly losing it. She'd been around my dad too long, thought she was in charge. "Elder? That's funny." I added, "What kind of elder are you?" "Just a low-level employee of my dad, stop pretending." "Nancy!" She couldn't help but shout. The car stopped at the restaurant, and Johnny hurried over when he saw us. "Nancy, why are you so late?" I showed him a guilty face getting out of the car. "Dad, I might have said something to upset this lady. I truly didn't mean it." Bella's anger hadn't faded, but once facing Johnny, she quickly put on a gentle act. "It's all right, Johnny. She's just a kid, no harm." "Really, Auntie? But you just said you're my elder and told me to show more respect." I continued. "Elder?" Johnny's eyes were sharp when he looked at Bella, catching on to that word. "Johnny, I didn't say that, I just..." "Enough. Get back to the office, we don't need you here." Johnny cut her off, turned with my hand in his and walked away. Bella stood behind, her lip quivering and eyes reddening, not daring to say a word. I know all too well what kind of person my father is. Cunning and prideful, he values face and trusts no one. His authority can't be questioned, especially by those around him. If you can't obey, he'll disdain you. So when Bella and Jane showed the slightest bit of greed, he'd loathe them 100-fold. Seeing Ken at the restaurant made me uneasy. In my past life, it was junior year when Johnny introduced him to me. Our families grew closer, and so did we, until I hopelessly fell for him. But I'm only a sophomore now. Why's he showing up so soon in this life? Ken still had that pretentious elegance I remembered. In my last life, I pined for 2 years. We got engaged, and after Mom's death, he was my only source of warmth. Although he never acknowledged my love, barely ever reciprocated, he later got tangled with Jane. He cruelly told me he couldn't marry his true love because of me. Seeing them in that hotel room bed broke me. Could barely breathe. I quickly broke off the engagement. But even my one-sided love and sacrifice didn't earn his mercy. At the reception's empty garden, Jane pushed me into the pool. He just watched as I drowned. "Nancy, you should have been dead long ago." Such harsh words echoed in my mind, matching the man in front of me. "Hello, I'm Ken, a classmate." "Hi, I'm Nancy. Nice to meet you." I smiled sweetly and shook his hand, noticing that look of surprise in his eyes. In my past life, I understood why he chose Jane over me. After my mom passed, my personality was tough to deal with. I clung onto him like he was my lifeline, not knowing he was more like poison. My bad luck, to a large extent, was influenced by Ken until my death. "Nancy, you probably don't know, but Ken is in your senior year at school. If you need help, just ask him," Ken's dad cheerfully introduced as he spoke. Our families had business dealings, but they depended on us more. Ken quickly chimed in, "I'll take care of Nancy, my little sister." I felt a twinge of sarcasm inside. "No, Ken, it's me who'll look after you. The future is long, and I'll take care of you well." The meal tasted bland as I pondered how to solve my mom's unresolved issues. Johnny's infidelity was a fact I couldn't change, but I didn't want my mom suffering because of him. A week later was the midterms at school. Last time I was at the bottom of my class, but this time I made it into the top 30. My math isn't great. Even after months of hard work, I only scored a 90. And Jane? Her name ended up last in the class ranking. Everything seemed to be going the way I hoped. Studying was going well, my mom was alive, and Jane and her mom weren't causing much trouble. But coming home that day, I sensed something wasn't right inside the house. A clatter followed, things being smashed. My mom sat on the couch, her eyes closed. "Johnny, are you asking for a divorce?" It was inevitable. She found out about the affair. I ducked into the house, grabbed pre-prepared med, and hurried with water to her. "Mom, please don't get upset. Take these med first, okay?" Maybe it was how calm I was. She actually took them obediently and followed me upstairs. I turned to look at Johnny. As much as I hated him, I still comforted him. "Dad, I'll talk to Mom." I wasn't yet ready to confront him directly. I couldn't let Mom go down the same path again. My approach soothed Johnny, who left the house seemingly on a thought. Tonight Bella will find no peace either. Mom sat frozen on the bed. The first thing she asked when she saw me was, "Nancy, are you hungry?" My nose stung with emotion. I hugged her. "Mom, don't be afraid. I'll always be with you. You knew, didn't you?" She knew me well. She knew my recent change in behavior had to do with the situation. I nodded. She started to cry, cursing Johnny, a gentle soul now pushed to the brink. "You bastard, letting Nancy see this," she said. Even now, her concern was for me. "Mom, I've grown up," I reassured her, offering a cup of warm water. Previously, under Bella and Jane's oppression, I'd forgotten my mom's own resilience. "Mom, look at this. I did great on the test." I showed her my report card, ranking 6th. "How did you improve so much?" she asked, confused but soon overjoyed. "Mom, lately I've been getting the hang of it. Those problems seemed easy, so these life obstacles should be easy for us too, right?" Her eyes reddened, her fragile strength shattering as she wept softly. "Nancy, you're too young to know such things." She caressed my forehead, eyes full of tenderness. "I won't let anyone bully you." Last time, Jane had already wormed her way into our home, charming Dad, while Bella boldly flaunted the affair by calling my mom. This time, Bella timed her revealing message perfectly. Mom saw it, but I was there to calm her down. Johnny isn't dumb. He must have realized Bella's ambitions. The next day, Jane showed up at school with a spring in her step, exuding confidence even towards me. I checked with Johnny's office but found neither he nor Bella were there. After school, I saw a car pick up Jane. It was from Johnny's company. I planned to follow them, but Ken interrupted. "Nancy, I heard your grades improved. Congrats." I didn't want to talk, wanting to catch up with Jane. Ken continued chatting. "Heard your math isn't great. If you're interested, I could tutor you." Previously, Johnny had Ken tutor me, and that was how I fell for him. I almost refused but reconsidered, turning back with a sweet smile. "Sure, I'd appreciate that." Thinking back, what else could grip Johnny like this? Just one thing linked to Bella. Last time, her pregnancy was her golden ticket, claiming it was a boy. Johnny wanted a son so badly he forgot everything else. Bella's pregnancy didn't last, though. At 4 months, due to a dog allergy, she miscarried. It's nobody's fault but fate's. She was simply rushed by a dog, triggering the allergy. And this was my chance for revenge. 3 days later, Johnny remembered to come home. His face lit with excitement, ignoring the affair. Mom stood on the stairs confronting him. "Johnny, we need to talk." Unsurprisingly, another fight broke out. Johnny seemed unfazed by the affair being known. "I want a son," was all he said to Mom. "The woman is pregnant?" she asked. Johnny nodded, then softened. "Kate, she won't replace you. Let's take the boy to raise after he's born, okay?" Before my mom's death, Johnny hadn't thought of divorce. Despite being shameless, he cared about appearances. Bella's desire to replace my mom led to her murderous intentions. "Johnny, you're insane." I quickly intervened as Mom's anger peaked. I brought in more prepared medicine to the side room. Seeing me, Johnny looked anxious. "Nancy, why are you here?" I looked down and said casually, "It's the weekend, Mom. Drink this first." Johnny left with just a sentence. "I've been busy lately and won't be back for a while." "Kate, think about it. I'll wait for your answer." After he left, I quietly asked my mom, "You will divorce him, right?" She hesitated. "Silly child, what will you do if we divorce?" "Mom," I said, emotional. "Believe it or not, I'd have a worse life if you stayed together." Maybe my serious tone got to her. She was silent for a while, then lifted her chin, a determined look in her eyes. "I will divorce. I can't let you get hurt." All it took was one me to help her make a decision quickly. The next day, Mom put on the business attire she hadn't worn in years and headed to the company. Since I was born, Mom had given up managing the company. On the surface, Johnny called all the shots, but in reality, Mom held 30% of the shares, just 10% less than Johnny. Before leaving, she playfully ruffled my hair and asked, "Nancy, what have you been giving me to drink lately? My throat feels cool and comfortable." "Just some throat-soothing tea," I smiled. It was a prescription from a Chinese doctor I found in a past life when Mom's lung disease worsened. I filled it for a year back then, became an expert. After sending Mom off, I glanced at my phone. A message from Ken popped up. "Nancy, I'll wait for you in the music room after class today." I replied with an okay, grabbed my bag and headed to school. It's Monday and I walked into the classroom just as the morning reading bell rang. Jane was buried in a pile of books, looking like she was studying, but I clearly saw her chatting on her phone. The chat avatar was Johnny's. As I stood over her screen, I coincidentally caught a message. "After class, I'll send someone to pick you up to the hospital. Listen, study well, okay?" Jane replied, "Thank you, I won't let you down." I couldn't help but let out a sarcastic laugh, thinking how good this mother-daughter duo was at pretending. "Nancy, why are you standing there? Class started, sit down." The teacher's voice snapped Jane's attention to me. Our eyes locked and she quickly hid her phone, flustered. "Jane, the teacher mentioned you're a single child," I said after sitting down. I never spoke kindly to her before, and she seemed surprised. Switching to a pitiful look, she said, "Although I'm single, I never felt lesser than others." Jane always had a way with words, no wonder I was fooled back in the day. "If that's the case, why are you on your phone during class?" I mocked. She blushed, scrambling for an excuse because my mom's in the hospital, so I cut her off. The teacher said I'm improving a lot lately and suggested I help students who are struggling. "But I don't have much teaching experience," I continued. "There's a senior who can help me with math, you should join us. You might have heard of him, his name is Ken." At the mention of Ken's name, Jane's eyes lit up, nodding eagerly. "I'd love to, thank you, Nancy." Bella and her daughter were always in that mindset, thinking they could change their social status by marrying well. Bella had Johnny, Jane had Ken. The music room echoed with piano notes. As I opened the door, I saw Ken sitting at the piano playing seriously. In the sunlight, he looked like a lead from a teen drama, though I only saw someone I couldn't stand. Jane, on the other hand, was starstruck, her face flushed. She had dressed up today, hair down her shoulders, wearing a no-makeup look, soft and pitiable. Ken's eyes shifted from me to her, unable to hide his awe. "Perfect, this is the outcome I wanted." Ken was ordered by his dad to win my favor, planning for a future family alliance. But I was never his type. He wasted a year on me, eventually got close to Jane. This time I brought them together, saving them the secret side glances. "Senior, this is my desk mate Jane. We're here to learn, hope you don't mind." I sweetly called out, feigning intimacy. "Your classmate is my friend, I don't mind at all," Ken said, though his gaze didn't leave Jane. During the whole math tutoring session, I felt like the third wheel. Ken was helping Jane solve problems, both engrossed, seemingly forgetting my presence. Jane then said, "Nancy, I have so many questions." "You're so smart, you won't mind, right?" "I don't mind, wouldn't mind at all. Better they stay together forever." I had learned enough. "Since you have so many questions, you can learn by yourself here." I stood up and left the classroom, not forgetting to lock the door with the classroom's key on my way out. On the third day, Jane shyly confronted me. "Nancy, why did you lock the door? Do you know Ken and I were stuck until midnight before someone let us out?" "Ken? On a first-name basis after a day?" I gave a detached "oh" and didn't bother with her, though she proudly raised her chin. "Ken said our basics are different. He'll tutor me separately." She thought provoking me with Ken would make me jealous. Little did she know, it was all part of my plan. Recently, Mom's been spending every day at the company, looking more anxious each day. I could roughly guess what's going on. Back in college, when I was a sophomore, Johnny's company had a huge tax evasion issue, reported after years of dodging. Johnny nearly lost the company trying to fix it. Mom knows auditing, she's probably finding accounting gaps at the company these days. "Mom, we talked about some news in my politics class today." I handed her a cup of cold tea. She seemed distant but stayed gentle with me, so I continued. "It was about a celebrity who got caught for tax evasion and landed in jail." Hearing this, Mom's expression changed, glancing at me thoughtfully. "Nancy, what's with you lately?" I quickly joked it off. "It's almost final, so the teacher shares stories to help us relax." But Mom, is getting caught for tax evasion that serious? We better watch out. I turned and headed back to my room, though I clearly saw her changing expression, eventually calming down. Mom, I hope this time you make the right choice. Recently, Jane's been all dolled up, constantly looking at herself in the mirror during class. She's been getting tutored by Ken for 2 months now, and I'm not sure how deep their relationship has gotten. Jane, how's your learning with Ken going? I asked. She had a moment of pride on her face but quickly masked it with an innocent look. The senior's very patient, though I'm too slow. Might need more time. I secretly laughed but feigned concern. You probably don't know. My dad and Ken's dad are close, so naturally Ken and I have a special connection. We might even tie the knot in the future. As soon as those words left my mouth, I saw a cold glint in her eyes. Jealousy mixed with anger she could barely hide. I went on, Ken's really great, isn't he? We're a pretty good match. He's graduating next semester, so he can only tutor you for like a month. You better make the most of it. My voice was gentle with a hint of persuasion. Even though Jane knew I disliked her, she didn't see anything off in my tone. I'm going to the restroom, she said, clutching her phone as she rushed away. I followed her stealthily. Sure enough, I heard her on the phone in the bathroom stall. Ken, what's going on between you and Nancy? Her voice was tearful. The person on the other end comforted her for ages before she calmed down. Ken, you have to be truthful to me. You're all I care about. For a high school girl, she sounds pretty mature. I know Jane well, so I said those things just to provoke her. When she came back, she looked pale but smug. Feigning ignorance, I asked, I've invited Ken over this weekend to study. Wanna join? Despite making up her mind to come, she pretended to be polite. Is that okay? I nodded quickly. I've been mean to you before. Consider this my apology. She's just a high school student, still a bit green compared to someone like me, an adult. On my way home from school, I made a detour to the pet shop before heading back. When I got home, Mom was sitting exhausted on the couch, looking at some documents. But she immediately smiled when she saw me. I noticed there were photos of Bella and her daughter mixed in with the papers. Anything happen at school recently? She asked, testing the waters. I knew she meant Jane. So I told her about Jane being brought in by Johnny to our school, revealing she's actually Bella's daughter. He dared to put that woman's daughter near you. She stood abruptly. In truth, I didn't think Johnny arranged it intentionally. Bella just wanted a better life for her daughter, trying to deceive me along the way. Don't worry, Mom. I'm fine. But how do you know all this? Mom finally caught on that I couldn't have found all this information myself. I made up a story about overhearing Jane talking to some thugs when Johnny walked by and spoke to her. That girl got thugs to bully you? Mom was furious, a normally gentle woman now seething. I was about to say something to calm her when she regained her composure. With a faint invisible smirk, she said, Nancy, there's something important I'm working on. Mom, I support you no matter what you do. On the weekend, Mom headed to the office early. Shortly after, Ken and Jane arrived together. The undercurrents between two teenagers couldn't escape my notice as an adult. I held back my disgust and clung to Ken's arm. Ken, I've been waiting for you. Jane stood halted and unhappy. Ken looked puzzled by my sudden closeness. I pretty much stuck to him all morning, even feeding him fruit, constantly emphasizing, Ken, my dad says we should spend more time together since we're gonna get married. I dropped my eyes and blush, leaving room for imaginations to run wild. With my blatant show of affection, Ken dared not refuse, and Jane was seething. Once the display was over, I excused myself. I pulled out my phone and dialed the long-forgotten number. Hello, who is this? Bella's voice came through the line. I adopted a panicked, upset tone. Aunt Bella, do you know where my dad is? I can't reach him, and since you're his secretary, can you help me find him? Before she could ask how I got her number, someone else took the phone. Johnny's voice came through. Nancy, what's happening? Take it slow. I burst into tears. Dad, Ken, he doesn't like me. He's into one of my classmates. They're together at our place right now. I purposely left it cryptic, letting imaginations run wild. Thinking it was a big deal, Johnny was baffled until I dropped Jane's name. After a brief silence on his end, Bella chimed in. Impossible, she wouldn't dare. Johnny exploded. She dares to hurt my daughter. She wouldn't dare anything less. He then asked, they're at our house, right? I'm coming over. I hung up and pulled up the bedroom surveillance on my iPad. Ken and Jane were being affectionate, with Jane starting to cry, unknowingly that everything was being recorded. In roughly 10 minutes, Johnny showed up with Bella, whose belly was slightly swollen. Just as I expected, once I tattled on Jane, how could her mom not intervene? Tears brimming in my eyes, I led Johnny to the bedroom. Ken and Jane were poised, seemingly ready to make a move when we burst in, exchanging sappy looks. Ken's careless remark nailed it. "Jane, don't worry, Nancy's got nothing on you. You're the one I like." Johnny stormed in, dragging them apart, while Bella stood shocked by the table. But my eyes were fixated on 2 felt toys on the table, and during the chaos, I slipped them into Bella's pocket. Then my mom came back. "Johnny, how dare you bring those 2 into our home?" Everyone connected to my past life gathered in my bedroom. I felt strangely nostalgic. Even now, Ken tried defending himself. "I was just tutoring Nancy. We're all classmates." Johnny dismissed him swiftly and slapped Jane. "You wench." Jane had ruined Johnny's plans to betroth me in a family alliance, leaving him furious. Bella hurried to shield her daughter but was shoved to the floor. Mom and I stood back, watching the spectacle. Soon Bella clutched her belly, grimacing, "Ow, my stomach." Johnny picked her up, hands stained with blood. By the time the ambulance arrived, Bella had passed out from pain. I felt a rush of satisfaction, but when I glanced at Mom, I saw tears in her eyes. "Mom, what's wrong?" I hugged her, worried. Her voice was hoarse. "Nancy, I don't want you involved in this mess. Mom can handle it." "Handle everything? Like what?" That day, Bella was taken away, and Ken scurried back home. When Mom told me that, I saw no doubt in her, a mix of struggle and sorrow in her eyes. She shouldn't suspect I orchestrated this. I'm just a kid to her. "Mom, what do you mean?" She only shook her head and walked out. Of course Bella's kid was gone. I put a felt toy made of pure dog hair in her pocket. But Johnny thought it was Jane and Ken who upset her so much that she miscarried. He slapped Jane so hard, her face was numb, but it didn't even come close to the anger he felt from losing his son. "It really wasn't me. It was Nancy who called me to your place for tutoring." "Are you still dragging my daughter into this? Wasn't it your daughter who got you and Ken tangled up?" When my mom and I rushed to the hospital, this was the scene we walked into. I felt a wave of satisfaction, knowing that what Jane did was beyond repair in Johnny's eyes now. My mom, however, stayed surprisingly calm. It was a bit worrying. Facing Bella and her mother, she hadn't said much, and even Johnny began to feel a bit guilty. "Kate, have you thought it over? What's there to think about when the baby is already gone?" My mom's voice was cold and haunting. "Or are you hoping I can accept this woman?" That was when Bella slowly came back to consciousness. "I didn't mean it. I just like Johnny and I don't ask for any status." Mom just scoffed. "It's not your turn to speak." I couldn't help but feel amazed at my mom's newfound assertiveness since, in my memory, she had always been gentle and never harsh. Yet, I was also relieved by her decisiveness. Finally, she wouldn't torment herself over other people's mistakes. Then she pulled out a document. The divorce papers, just sign them. Johnny panicked instantly, not expecting his ever-so-complying wife to be so firm. It wasn't that he couldn't let go of my mom. He couldn't let go of those 30 shares in the company. "I'm not divorcing you." Johnny tore up the agreement instantly. My mom wasn't fazed, just chuckled coldly. "Johnny, I gave you a chance." As we left the hospital, she returned to her gentle demeanor. "Nancy, don't overstep. Leave it to Mom." Her gaze seemed to penetrate my heart, reminding me of the herbal medicine stashed in my backpack, a potion I had prepared a month in advance to use on Ken and Jane. In my past life, they got me killed. I wouldn't let them live without facing the consequences. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "I don't get it," I replied sweetly. "I don't want you to get your hands dirty," she said with a furrowed brow, rubbing the top of my head. Her eyes were growing more complicated. I couldn't understand them at all. What had changed? But the decision I made long ago couldn't be altered. From the moment I laid eyes on Ken again, I envisioned countless scenarios of him collapsing in front of me. But really, the first one should have been Jane. With the prepared solution clutched in my palm, Jane went to the restroom, and her water bottle was right there. I hesitated for just a second before pouring the drug in. It was a colorless, tasteless potion I'd studied in my past life. It wouldn't kill her instantly. The drug would slowly erode her internal organs. Afterward, I exhaled deeply. This was the most foolproof method I could think of. I didn't even have the chance to see Jane drink the water because the teacher called me over. Nancy, don't be scared. The world changes in an instant. What's happening at home won't affect you. Her tone was odd, and then I learned that Johnny had been jailed for tax evasion. That's when I realized my mom had been planning this all along. Not long after, she called me. Nancy, come home. Mom has something to tell you. Mom had prepared a feast. The company shares were distributed before Johnny went to jail. All his shares are in your name now. Once you're of age, they'll be legally yours. As for Bella, you don't need to worry about her. She's collaborated with Johnny for years and embezzled quite a bit herself. Jail won't miss her either. Jane should no longer appear at your school. As for Ken's family, they set up a shell company to help Johnny launder money. I've submitted the fake accounts to the authorities. They haven't got long. Every word was like a report, a recap of everything she'd orchestrated. In 3 months, she not only brought down Johnny but also everyone who wronged me in my past life. Thoroughly. I stared in awe as she placed shrimp in my bowl. I know you love shrimp. Try what I made. Pink shrimp nestled among almonds, a dish originally called cashew shrimp. Back in junior year of high school, I choked on a cashew and had to get it removed at the hospital. And since then, Mom's shrimp dish contained tiny almonds instead. But I was only a freshman, I hadn't swallowed a cashew yet. Mom. My voice trembled, afraid a louder sound might startle her. Mom, did you come back too? I almost screamed, holding back my breath as my heart raced. She smiled sweetly, placing another piece for me. Nancy, Mom missed you so much. The rain poured outside and my tears flowed just as much. Mom, I missed you too. You have no idea how much I missed you, how scared I was after you left. I sobbed into her arms like a child, letting out a decade's worth of grievances. No wonder she changed so much. No wonder she wouldn't let me meddle. In just 3 months, she exposed Johnny's entire crew's tax evasion, despite having been away from the books for over a decade before. Why did her eyes always carry such complicated emotions? Why was she always worried I'd dirty my hands with wrongdoing? When I drowned that day, I came to this world. In that moment on the stairs when I embraced my mom, she had also come to this world. In the transit to this world, she witnessed her daughter's future after she was gone. She saw me being bullied by Bella and her mother, saw how Ken and Jane drowned me. She came with just one mission, to protect me. Mom, I still killed. I recalled the poison I left for Jane. But my mom just laughed, tousling my hair. Silly girl, I already swapped the drug. How could I let you be so foolish? In my past life, Mom got so sick with pneumonia because of Bella that I once thought about poisoning her. Yet Mom, even in her frailty, stopped me. Nancy, you're my daughter. You should live with joy and brightness. A month later, the case on tax evasion and money laundering proceeded, resulting in Johnny's 7-year sentence and Bella's 3-year one. Ken's family collapsed and burdened with debt. Ken gave up his college entrance exams. Jane returned to the countryside. Her greedy grandmother arranged a marriage for her with a divorced man from the next village. 2 years later, my mom had become the legitimate head of the company and was a renowned businesswoman. Meanwhile, I got into Cambridge University with the 3rd highest score in our school. Our new lives were just beginning.